Well, good evening, sir. Welcome to another episode of the Business Everyday Show. My name is Jonathan Wilms, and today in the studio, I have a friend of mine, one that I've known for, again, gosh, how many years? We were in high school together?
Yeah, middle, maybe high school.
Maybe high school, and then we've stayed connected through all those different years, talking through many different so many different businesses or ideas or like, hey, I'm going to make some money, quick opportunities. And here we are so many years later, and we're going to talk about your business. So I'm going to ask you, my friend, what's your name, what's your business, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Wimpelberg. Grew up around Clarksville, Tennessee with Jonathan. I'd always been a performer, always been performing pretty much through middle and high school with the middle and high school bands, and then also even at our church, Jonathan and I played together on our Wednesday night youth group band.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And so I always grew up a performer. I knew I wanted to work in a performing atmosphere. It's funny though, because I didn't exactly go that route in school professionally or anything like that initially. I started off going to Austin P for business finance. I did, however, I was on their marching band as well, so I did kind of carry on through there, but that was pretty much it. And then I personally did not have a great college experience. School wasn't really working for me the way I was hoping it would.
Yeah.
Part of that's because of how I treated it and also a little bit of how I was treated by the professor specifically. And so, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go join the Army. This will all make sense in a minute.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Don't like school, let's join the Army. Okay, got it. Got it.
Well, it was one of those where it's like, I'm paying for something I don't enjoy. If I join, I could at least be paid to go to school if I chose to go back, but I don't have to. And plus, the Army has its own slew of opportunities. So I was like, let me just go and do that.
Right.
I was gone at my training over like Christmas and New Year's, and so we got a break. We got a 2-week break. We all went back to our homes. During that break, I was at my house that I was renting with some friends of mine, and I was just on my laptop and on YouTube, and I can't remember exactly like what got me there, but I found Skrillex's 2014 Red Rocks show. I wasn't a big EDM person at the time or anything like that. I wasn't like, it came across my feed, and I was like, oh, what's this? And of course, that was kind of peak Skrillex time anyway, for those that, knew of him.
Right.
And, but anyway, I was watching it, and it was a full recording of that show. And I just remember thinking like, this looks incredible. This is amazing. Like how they're creating moments, how they're telling a story with just some light being thrown around, a lot of light. Let me clarify.
A lot
of light. Yeah. Just they were visually telling a story to what everybody was hearing. And I was like, that is so cool. And of course, it's in the realm of performing. It's in the realm of just doing something behind the scenes that makes the moment bigger. Of course, I also got a little bit inspired to do something in that realm anyway, because my dad was also a audio engineer. He went to school at Belmont as an audio engineer, and so I was already kind of like in the world of the behind the scenes stuff. I'd already seen
lots of exposure to that world.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So not so much for the sake of deliberately trying to follow his footsteps, but like, it just was one of those where it's like, well, he's done it, so I at least have somebody in my family that specifically understands like the behind the scenes stuff. So maybe I wouldn't be so crazy if I said I wanted to go and do this.
Right.
So I finished up that holiday block leave, and all I could think about for the remaining however many weeks, 13 to 16 weeks, somewhere in there, that I had training left, all I could think about was I want to come back and figure out how to do lighting. And so after I got done with all my training in March, me and another friend of mine that lived in the area, we went we went somewhere and happened to meet these DJs that were playing at this. I think it was a bar. They were playing at this bar one night, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys ever thought about having like lights and stuff?" And they were like, "Well, not really. Do you have them?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I can get them. I just if you think it would be cool, like I'm wanting to do this."
Let like, me play, please.
Yeah, pretty much. So 2 weeks later, so in a span of 2 weeks, I had gone to Guitar Center, spent like all the money I had made in all of my 6.5 months of Army training, spent it all on a bunch of lights, some truss, all the cabling I needed, a program with the little USB dongle that converts the signal to what I needed it to be in DMX. And 2 weeks later, I had confirmed with them, "Hey, I've got stuff, can I bring it?" They're like, "Yeah." So I get there, I set it all up, and that was the first time. I had like 4 RGB pars. I had this big like truss system.
Yeah.
It was incredibly simple, but it was a ton of fun. And they were like, this is your first time ever doing lights?" I was like, "I mean, yeah." And they're like, "No, you're lying." I was like, "No, tell them the truth." Because they really liked it, and I very quickly had a good knack for it. And I thoroughly enjoyed that whole experience. So I was doing that with them throughout the summer. This is back in 2015.
Volunteer, or did you get paid to do that?
Yeah, so pretty much all of it was volunteer.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
but...
I did like 2 gigs with them where I think I got paid like, one was like $20, one was maybe 40.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, it was just one of those where it was like, "Oh, I'm not doing anything else tonight," and it was directly I had such a joy doing it where I didn't care about the money. But of course, everybody wants to make a little bit, so like,
sure.
It was just one of those where I had to figure out how to start joining the enjoyment of it and making money from it.
Okay.
But the thing is, I was enjoying it more than I was worried about the making money part.
Right.
So I just kept going with that. So I did that for about a full summer, and then I had an Army opportunity come up. I moved out to North Carolina for a year. I didn't do anything with lights for like an entire year. The pay situation wasn't great there. I ended up selling all my lights just because I needed that little bit of money.
Right. The hobby had to go.
Yeah. So that was kind of a gut punch because I was like, I really enjoyed this. Anyway, after that year, I get moved back, and I'm like, okay, I really want to start learning the professional side of this. I learned how to do just a little bit. I want to learn how to do more. So I remember I bought a laptop. I think it was just a Lenovo Flex or something like that. I got it for like $400 used through like Best Buy's used program or whatever. And I downloaded a program, GrandMA 2, and just started learning that.
Okay.
My form of learning was quite literally just YouTube University and trial and error. I anytime anybody asks me about it, I like to always tell them I'm a forever resident of YouTube University.
Yep.
That's one school I will always be part of. That, and then the trial and error, where just because YouTube can tell you something doesn't mean you just know how to do it, or that's like the only way to do it. So I would always be trying different things. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. So I just had to have my own, source of energy to keep up with the learning curve. Because I mean, it was going from a simplistic program where I ran these 4 little RGB pars to a program that is an industry standard. I mean, massive festivals, massive concerts are programmed and controlled with this type of software.
Right.
It's not just a plug and play type situation. And so
it requires some skill.
Yeah, you have to think a little bit. Can you imagine that? So started learning that, but I wasn't specifically doing anything with it.
Okay.
It was more so just for myself. I wanted to begin learning, and I knew I was very much in the beginning stages. that brings me to about the end of 2018, where then I was expecting to be gone all of 2019 on a deployment. Again, I'm still Army. I'm Army Reserve this whole time, but I had some full-time opportunities that took me away for a little bit. And that deployment in 2019 was my third active duty opportunity, basically.
Okay.
So I knew I was going to be gone. But again, I had prepared for it. I bought a slightly better laptop that had a slightly better graphics card. That way I could, run my visualizer slightly better and, just be able to sustain a good learning opportunity while I was gone in another country.
Right.
So I get done with that and I come back. And again, it's just, I'm still trying to learn. I want to do more. I'm not getting opportunities, or I'm not finding opportunities to really start doing this. And luckily I found another page on Facebook. I ended up following them on Instagram, luckily soon enough, because not too long after they had posted a story saying, hey, any lighting directors, lighting designers, or LDs, anybody available to help this theater in Baltimore? And I replied, yeah, I mean, I'm from Nashville, but sure, I can do that. They were like, okay, cool, we'll get in touch with them, or we'll send you their information. So I got in contact with them. They're like, so you're from Nashville, huh? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I know it's a bit of a
hike.
Yeah. But I was like, look, I'm more so just in the space of wanting to learn. I've been learning this software for a long time, which they had the hardware there that supported the software I was learning.
Okay.
So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to see if everything I've been attempting to learn on a visualizer is will work in the real world.
Right.
They took me up on bringing me out. What's funny about that is the amount they paid me was almost the exact amount. I think I profited like $50. It covered my plane ticket there.
Okay.
I flew out that morning, did the show, and then they drove me back over to the airport that night. I didn't stay in a hotel.
Wow.
I slept in the airport overnight. But that one show was just like, I've learned something here, and I had so much fun with even just this little bit that I got to do. It
was like the first translation from, okay, I'm going to go from visualizer to now it's in real life. Can I actually do this thing? And you can.
Yeah. It was a gratifying moment. I was like, I can see myself doing this.
So from Baltimore back to Nashville.
Yeah, so after finishing that show, I knew I wanted to do more. I just didn't know exactly how to get there. I had yet another full-time Army opportunity come up, and I had been doing some odd jobs, like working in a warehouse where we did merch for artists and whatnot. Again, just kind of being in the world, but not really. There was a better money opportunity for me to go work full-time at my unit in Nashville, so I went and did that. While I was there, I actually started to go to a few different EDM shows that were happening in Nashville with another friend of mine. And I specifically remember there were these two shows. They were at the same place, and the same guy was running lights for both of those shows. So I noticed him the first time. The second time, it was like, hey, this guy was here before. So the second time, I was like, I want to go talk to this guy, find out like where he's getting his work from, if he has any contacts, or if he himself needs any help. So I went over and talked with him, and I introduced myself. I was like, "Hey, look, I'm a lighting designer. I'm just looking for more work. I'm curious. Do you work for yourself? Do you work for a company?" He said, "Oh, I'm completely freelance." I was like, "Oh, cool. Like that's primarily what I want to do for myself."
Yeah.
And he was like, so you do lights, or you're learning them? Luckily, in my time learning all the lighting programming stuff, I had also created a short little show. It was all pre-visualized. It went along with a song, but basically I was able to show like, hey, here's my programming capability. And it was recorded. It had music going with it. So I was able to show him that video, and he was like, I remember his reaction. He was like, "Oh, you like really do lighting?" I was like,
golly. Yeah, I find it's so interesting. Is like, you can't wait until you're asked to perform to have the portfolio. Like, you really have to just be ready. It's like always be ready for that, 60-second elevator pitch. It's like, but today in our like modern world, I'm trying to think of like my world, your world, and like you almost need to have your YouTube link ready to go at any point. It's like,
yeah.
what are you capable of doing? Click, here I go.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that like you did that, knowing or not knowing that opportunity was going to come, and then you were able to go like, hey, dude, like you got a second? Let me actually show you what you're going to do. And then he goes, oh, you're not just an amateur. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I showed him that. He was like, oh, you really do lighting? I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, okay, cool. Well, I maybe have some places I can send you. We exchange Instagram information and
keep it safe.
Yeah, right. and so he went on with the show. I was there with my friends, and it was all a great time. I messaged him afterwards. I was like, hey, it was great to meet you. If you've got anything you ever need, like, let me know. I'm looking to get my feet wet. Like, I'm looking for work. And he was like, sure, yeah. So send your resume here. I've also got another place I'll send you, or I'll send them your information. I was like, okay, cool. Sounds great. I heard nothing back for like a month. And I was like, well,
how common is that narrative?
Yeah. Now, luckily, I still have my full-time Army job, so I'm still making money. I'm not like hurting or anything.
Right.
But I was getting to a point with that stuff where I was like, I want to do something else. I knew I wanted to dive into the lighting world, but it was one of those things where it's like, if I don't do it now, I don't know that I ever will. I was 27 at the time. I know that's still incredibly young. There's so much opportunity to do
so
things.
Young, but so old.
But I put right, yeah. But I put that pressure on myself. I was
right.
like, if I just keep putting this off, like actually going into it professionally, I don't know that I ever will just go into it. I was like, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. I knew I was going to be done with that full-time segment come October 1st. This was the end of 2022. So I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I want to do that. I didn't hear anything from this guy for a month. And I was like, well, I thought this was going to work.
Yeah.
I thought this was something. A month and a couple days later, I get a message from a production manager at a venue here in town. Says, hey, this person sent me your information. Could you be here for these 3 shows? I was like, yeah, sure.
Just out of the blue.
Yeah, just out of the blue. He didn't ask for my credentials or my resume or anything like that. He just went on this other lighting designer's word that I was capable.
Golly, that's so cool.
Yeah. So, and all I had to show for as far as like my capability was just that video. There were no resumes formally sent to him or the venue. It was just, I showed one guy a video and he vouched for me.
Vouching that it was your video, that it wasn't some just, I found
a
video.
Maybe it was my video.
I was like, he didn't even know. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
for the record, it is my video.
We can link that video in the description.
Right, yeah. So I went and did those shows and immediately like fell in love with it. And the production manager there, he was asking me to continue booking more shows with them. They had, so their LD position, they had open to freelancers. So I was like, oh, let me do this. This is what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
Sure enough, October 1st came around. I was done with my Army stuff and I just went straight into doing shows. I started doing shows with them. Those first 3 shows were in August. I had to be kind of sparing with what shows I could do as I was finishing up that full-time Army time.
Sure.
Once October 1st hit, I went from like doing 5 shows a month. I think October was like 14.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and of course I wasn't making just $50 this time. So
right.
It was way more doable financially for me to be like, okay, plus I wasn't having to bring like 4 pars and a tiny truss. Like everything was all there. They supplied all the lighting, they supplied the console. What interestingly enough, the console type they had works for GrandMA 3, which was the next software bump up. It's the newest version. And so of course working with 2, I already had a good idea of how
cool
MA thinks and works. There was a little bit of a curve going from 2 to 3, but having taken that time, unpaid time, barely any shows, taking that time to actually learn the program, it made me valuable when it came to starting to work in that venue.
Such a classic like manifestation of the common scenario, which is just like an opportunity is really only an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
if you are prepared and capable of harnessing it when it shows up.
Yep.
So it's like, it's not that you could start learning it
Yeah.
when the opportunity came. It's like, oh, let me quickly watch a YouTube video. It's like, no, dude, you've been doing this, prep work with YouTube University and asking questions and going to shows yourself for 5 years,
Yeah.
essentially at this point, or 7 years. And then that opportunity comes and then you can go for it.
Yeah. And also, when they told me that they work on Grand MA 3, this was still at a time where there weren't many YouTubers making videos about it. So everything I was learning was like bare bones information. The majority of my learning was even more so on the trial and error side.
Okay.
Just kind of, I was able to go off of a previous knowledge of how MA2 worked and how the developers thought through different processes. So I was able to kind of implement some of those ideas into 3. Not all of them, they did make some upgrades that made what I thought I knew a little different. But,
Okay.
But I was able to take that pre-existing knowledge. I had to rely more on that pre-existing knowledge to make myself valuable for the program type that they have there. So while this is happening, I'm also realizing like I want to work into the rental space.
Okay. So what I'm going to stop you right there in your narrative.
Sure.
Be disruptive. How do you go from being an LD or the mindset of an LD saying, I want to design and control the lighting for shows to, and I want to own the equipment for the shows and then rent that out to people?
Sure. Part of it was a little bit of like a selfishness where I want to provide myself the opportunity to create, I wouldn't say create stages, but have the opportunity to add to stages, to even there were some weddings that kind of intermittently happened and I was able to bring some of my own equipment. It was just equipment that I personally owned, but I was like, just the realization of being able to just provide equipment that helped whatever the event was on a visual aspect, on the just overall atmosphere of it, people enjoying, especially at a wedding when everybody's dancing,
right.
Just being able to enhance moments with just some lights. I wanted to give myself the opportunity to begin building on that. So not being so reliant on having to rent elsewhere, I was like, okay, well, if I'm paying somebody else for this equipment, what if I had it? Then I have the freedom to use it when I want, and I can also begin renting this stuff out and making money on it, just like somebody else is when I rent.
Which I think is one of the best opportunities in the 21st century is rentals, temporary rentals of anything. I mean, that's how we got Airbnb and Uber and Neighbor and all those other platforms that you can do temporary rentals. I mean, you're in the temporary rental space.
Right.
But so many people preach temporary rental. Oh, I'm going to buy that property and I'm going to rent it out, and it never gets rented out.
Right.
And so you have actually taken that idea and not just bought the hobby, you turned it into a business.
Yeah.
And you're not, I mean, just because I know you, I know part of the conversation was also like, I only have so many hours.
Yeah.
Is like, I can be at, a show every single night, but at the end of the day, that's only so many shows I can do is, 1, 2, I guess, a day. But that's my capacity. I could hire people and take a portion of their income or whatever. Yeah. But if you want to grow beyond that in your scope and you're be able to increase your revenues, like, you need something else.
Yeah.
And it sounds like equipment was the next step.
Yeah, there was a mind shift for me at one point. There was somebody that I worked for, or did some minimal work for in the Nashville area. He's a great businessman. He actually owns a think tank building here in town. In talking with him, I was such a young person at this time. I think I was maybe 22, 23 when I met him. If nothing else, the main thing I remember from him was him just telling me there's more money in ownership. There's always more money in ownership.
Yep.
If you own something and other people want it, there's more money and opportunity in that than there ever will be with you always trying to get elsewhere what you need now.
Right. That's good.
So holding on to that and kind of building on that principle, that's yet another piece of what was like, I want to turn this into a business. I want to be able to supply for myself supply for other people, because number one, there's a kind of a gratification where I'm able to help provide for other people with whatever project it is that they're doing, whatever show it is, helping them create an atmosphere, create a creative space. Create a creative space. That's an interesting one. Yeah. But just expound on I'm going to say it again, the creativity they're already bringing with their music. Now we can bring a visual aspect.
Just an enhancement.
It's just an enhancement.
Totally recreate the experience.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing for you to just hear the music. It's another thing to feel like you're experiencing it, because more senses are wrapped around what's being played.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to build on that. So started turning it into a business, and I did some side business stuff with the name of the business, Firebreak Lighting.
Firebreak Lighting.
Firebreak Lighting. Where I got that name? I was living on, I think it was Firebreak Drive in 2015 when I bought those lights.
Yeah.
For those to do shows with those DJs. I lived on Firebreak Drive, and I was like, Firebreak. This sounds good.
I mean, that's how Microsoft got its name.
Is that right?
Do you know, so like Microsoft was, the reason they got their name is because they needed a name. They were going to go register the business, but they hadn't had a business name, Bill Gates and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we know we deal with microchips and we live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Oh, Microsoft. And it's Microsoftware, and it's in San Francisco. And anyway, yeah.
I didn't know that.
The formation of names is quite an interesting thing. It's like, we think it's like, oh, they're so inspirational. What a cutting edge individual. It's like, you live on Firebreak Drive. How awesome is that?
Yeah. Well, it was like, once I remember passing by the sign one day, and I was like, Firebreak. Like, I may not remember the exact, moment that it happened, but I do remember when it was like something clicked, and it was like, I could do something with that name. And then sure enough, I started doing things under the name of Firebreak Lighting, but no filed LLC or anything like that. It was just, I wanted to start not only differentiating myself, but also like start to advertise what it was I was trying to do. Started working on that.
And that's fall of 2022?
This is fall of 2022 when it was
you
really
became an entity, an actual business.
Not filed yet. But,
okay.
But yeah, so it was just, I did more of a push of myself and Firebreak Lighting are two different things. Yeah. Legally, they weren't really, but I was starting to instill this idea with anybody that asked.
I had this really interesting conversation. It was like 2 weeks ago, and the question was asked, I was like, what does it mean to do it under your business versus doing it in your own name? And it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? It's like, it's kind of fictitious. Yeah. I mean, there is a legal understanding of what that means for tax purposes. And I'm not a tax professional, so go talk to your CPA. But there's actually, like, you just do it as your entity, and then you do other things as yourself. And it's really like your intention. And my father's an attorney, and that's what he always, kept harping on me, all growing up. Is like, it's your intent. It's not what you did. It's not what you didn't do, especially growing up, getting in trouble. It's not what you did or didn't do. It was, what was your intention? Yeah. And that's really what the legal system is looking for. It's like, did you intend to operate as a separate entity, or did you intend to get around all these rules and regulations? It's like, no. My intent, or your intent at this point, was I'm going to start operating as two separate entities, two separate brands.
Well, it wasn't even just about operating as two separate brands. It was to begin advertising something I wanted to build on in the future. Right. I started putting the name out there to where not only did other people believe it more, I believed it more.
That's so
I believed
awesome.
that this was going to become a business.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a business. It's an entity. It has a name.
The little person on your shoulder saying, "No, it's not. No, it's not."
No, it's not.
It's like,
no,
yes,
it
is. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So I just the more I said it, the more I believed it, the more I wanted to work on it. It was all just a mind game, all because of, like you said, like the intent of where I'm looking to take it in the future. So we it's myself
and your entity.
Yeah. Me and this fictitious thing.
So you cut your lifeline from your, let's call it quote unquote 9 to 5 in October of 22, and then you had just a boatload of shows that showed up in October, November.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, no, I'm not. I need to do just more than this. So I'm going to buy more equipment, or I think that's how it went.
Kind of. So I had a few things play into this. So February of 23 was when I actually did file and get registered as an LLC. So this month is actually a year.
Happy birthday. 1 year. Yeah. Congratulations. What an awesome. Hey, this is perfect.
Isn't it? Around the same time, I was also selling a house that I owned, and I wanted to use some of that profit. I knew I needed to put some of it away. I needed to put some of it away to also prepare for the capital gains tax, because I wasn't putting that directly into another house.
Got it.
So, but I did know I wanted to put some of that profit into fixtures, or lights, however you want to say it. With some of that profit, I ended up buying lights that I knew would be useful and would at least be a good starting point for building up my rentals.
Fall of 22 to spring, you said February of 23. So you're doing like shows and you're starting to think through, okay, I'm going to have some money coming, and I want to actually like invest in myself, invest in my business. If I'm ever going to do it, let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And so you formed this entity, and I think you said you were an LLC. And I'm going to ask this question of almost every guest that's come on here. It's like, why did you choose an LLC versus any other entity?
Yeah. So probably the main answer you'll get from most people, because I realized this is applicable to me too. I did that because I was just what I was told.
You're supposed to have an LLC.
You're supposed to have an LLC. Yeah.
I love it so much. Oh my gosh, we're gonna create so much content around the actual reason why. And but it's true. It's like if you're gonna start a business, you start an LLC.
Yeah.
Like of course you do. You go to zenbusiness.com, or you go to this other place, or you go to this place, and you get an LLC package.
Yep.
And it's $1,000 or whatever it is, and you get your agent, and you get your registration, and they get your EIN, and now you're a business.
Yep.
And you have no money.
Yep. So luckily, with having sold a house recently, I was able to take some of that profit. Now that I had an entity, I was able to put some of those funds into starting to build up my inventory.
Okay.
That was the biggest thing I was getting hit with the idea of, I'm going to start a rental company, and I have like 3 lights. You know, it was just one of those where it's like, okay, I've really got to not only put my money where my mouth is, but I've got to make my company make sense. If I'm going to function as a rental house,
gotta have rentals.
Gotta have things that can be rented.
Yeah. So how much, if you don't mind saying,
Sure.
like how much did you invest to get your business started? Of like giving yourself the what you would consider to be the initial foundation for Firebreak.
Yeah. So it was kind of spread over a few months. Some of it was like new purchases, and some of it was just me doing the research on used, like but well-maintained equipment.
Yeah.
It was about $30,000.
Okay.
Yeah, that was about the total investment.
If there was anyone else in the room, the air just left.
Yeah, right. Where'd you get that? You just let all that go? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research that I put into, okay, what lights do I want to get?
Yeah.
How are those lights going to be held in place? I need to get clamps. I need to get truss. I need to get base plates that hold the truss up. I need to get cables, not only power, but also signal. I needed to be able to make everything connect and work. At the beginning, I thought kind of short of some of that stuff, not remembering, oh yeah, I need more clamps because this light takes 2 clamps per light than 1.
Okay.
And I mean, just like the really minuscule things. And now it's like, well, duh, you need 2 clamps for this light. That's just how it clamps onto truss and whatnot. But it was like, okay, I got these lights. Now I need to attach them to things. I need to be able to power them. I need to be able to run signal to them. So getting the power cables, the signal cables, getting a power distribution box. That way, when I show up to, for instance, the same venue I had been working at, I would sometimes rent. I now sometimes rent that power distro to the venue.
Wow.
But I've got to be able to connect my power distro to their power source, which takes a certain type of cable with certain types of ends and all that stuff. I had to supply myself with all of that. That way it can be used by not only myself but also other people in the future.
Yeah.
So 30,000 wasn't the initial plan. It was more so like, to be completely honest, somewhere between 12 and 15. After realizing kind of where that placed me, where that purchase of 12 to 15 actually placed me, and this was after I had this equipment, the purchases were already done, then it was like, okay, I need to build up a little bit more of this. I need a little bit more of this. I need some more cables. I need this power distro. So all in from the get-go was about 30,000.
Which in reality is not that much money.
No.
To start a company, to start a rental company that, I mean, essentially from day one, as long as you have rentals and you have a really cool and unique situation where you can not only be freelance, but you can also have your business supply the equipment that helps you do the freelance. Like, what a cool scenario.
Yeah.
You can, as long as you have those relationships with the music industry and the, shows and all, it's very relational. Like, as long as you have those bookings, you can start making money pretty much day one and start working on, okay, I'm going to start working on recouping this cost and, distribute over how many months or years was your plan. And then like, okay, this is what my profit could be with this many rentals. So, I mean, it's not that much money, but you have to have it or you have to commit to it. You could do 5,000 here or 5,000 there, but then could you actually do the rental business? I mean, the scientific concept of that is the irreversible simplicity. It's like, you can't get any simpler than this, otherwise it just doesn't function. It's not that you just do less. It's like, it doesn't work if it's any simpler than this.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was quite literally exactly what I hit, going from that $12,000 to $15,000 initial purchase and then realizing I need a bit more. Not only because I want more, but also because to function better, to have equipment that catches the eye, to have equipment that people are like, okay, this fits our need. I continued those purchases until I hit a point where I was like, okay, this is a good starting point, and I have everything that I need. So the next part really came figuring out, okay, how much do these lights rent for? There's an entire math with figuring out how much you rent things out for, what percentage of the retail cost, or if they're on a long-term lease, like where you change the variables for how much you charge them. And of course, also in business, you want to do good by other people. So then comes the idea of, okay, well, what if I made this price more appealing for them?
Right.
So you've got to now also balance out the good deed idea compared to your business is or is not making money. Right.
It's like, if I can do a good deed here, but then if I don't make money, I have to make extra on the second job, and then it could turn into that cyclone of death, which is like Turo, the car rental company. It's just this rush to zero at this point in history, where it's like, no, I'll do it for $50 a day. No, I'll do it for $20 a day. No, I'll do it for free. And it's like, you can't survive as a business at some point.
Well, and also the concept of if you do decide to be nice to one of your clients and like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, you're just using it for this little thing, I'll just charge you this much. You have to be able to emphasize that is not the normal cost.
Right.
Because then what happens when they're doing something very similar in the future and they're like, and you give them an invoice with the actual costs without the doing something nice for you discount. And now they're like, okay, but it only cost me this much last time. It's like, when I understand that. It's finding that balance.
So is that something that you encountered personally?
Specifically, no.
Okay.
Luckily.
Okay.
I would say more so that my prices have changed.
Right.
My rental prices have changed as I've learned more about, okay, how much maintenance does this item require over X amount of time? How often does this get rented? What would be my total time for return if this was rented for however many weeks? How many weeks would it take for that return to be,
right,
for me to be fully paid back for that equipment.
mm-hmm.
So luckily, no, I haven't run into that, but it's one of those where I had to be very quickly mindful that could happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I've just been a lot more cautious about any deals that I'm doing for somebody,
Right.
or if I'm making any changes to those prices. In some places that needs to be stated, hey, these prices have changed to reflect market, to reflect a closer to fair market price. Because I honestly was undercutting myself for the first little bit. It wasn't like by a crazy amount, but it was under, because I was like, ooh, I want to be a company that helps the little guy so much. That's one of my main focuses with Firebreak, is being able to supply things at a price range that helps the people that can't go work with the much larger companies.
Right.
If they can't fit their bill, does that mean that they can't get anything? So I want to fill that void, but I also need to be profitable.
Right.
So it's been a big learning curve. It's been interesting.
So how quickly after you bought your equipment did you get your first rental?
Oh, let's see. It was actually a very quick turnaround. Let's see. Most of that equipment was bought in April, and I had one of my big rentals happened in May. So
okay,
it's kind of been sporadic.
Yeah.
But it's when it's having figured out my prices over time,
mm-hmm.
it's helped me, yes, work up that profitability, but also kind of allow myself the financial patience of
right.
Okay, so next time I'm able to learn from each rental pretty much. I'm not saying that prices change after each rental or anything like that, but just the overall concept of, okay, I charge this much. This is everything that I brought to the table. Did I meet their needs? Did I meet my company's needs? What's the total return? How much closer am I to paying off these or paying myself back, I should say,
right,
for the equipment that I've bought.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a big learning curve. I've had maybe 6 or 7 rentals at this point, some of which has been all my equipment, some of which has also been a sublease from other companies that want much larger stuff.
Right.
It's also been a very nice thing I'm able to supply because of the type of insurance that I do, or I operate with. I'm able to sublease for, whether it be a band or a venue.
Okay, cool.
So, and because I sublease, I'm able to factor in this other production company's invoice in with mine, work in anything in addition that they need that's of mine or that I can supply,
mm-hmm.
and then still deliver a package that meets their needs, even though I don't have the equipment. Now, of course, my return on that is much less.
Right.
But I'm still able to get my name in front of them and say, hey, I am supplying this for you.
I'm a player. Look at me.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. So you decided to do these rentals. Did you decide to create that system on how you were going to operate the rentals, or how did you go about finding the software, the platforms, the apps, what you needed to operate your business? Did you do that as you were buying equipment? Did you do it after? Did you do it before? Did you have it all planned out step by step with 13 different options or variables? Or was it kind of just like, oh, now this is the next step. Now I need to figure that part out.
Yeah, it was kind of a mix of all of the before, now, after. Socials were kind of pre-established,
mm-hmm.
All the way back to 2015. In fact, if I'll talk about socials later, but if you look at I think it's my Instagram for Firebreak, I have stuff still posted from 2015, some from 2016, if I'm not mistaken. I have not been great at keeping up with those socials, but it's also because I've been trying to figure a lot of things out. I've only really started this over more specifically the past year.
Yeah.
So, and with all the craziness of figuring everything out, I have kind of put socials to the side. But I am both happy with that and upset with myself for having done that, because it's like, I'm happy with myself because that's one less thing I have to stress about.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to make a profitable company that I feel good about, that I feel like is taking care of my customers,
mm-hmm.
my clients, that's great. But at the same time, like that extra little bit of marketing, that extra little bit of, hey, I have more things to show, publicly show people. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, but I mean, the point of the socials is to create clients, and you've been able to do that more organically, at least from my perspective. Like you are doing the like, hey, I'll come in and operate your show as the LD. Oh, I can come in and supply the equipment and operate it. So it's like there's multiple ways in which you are actually marketing yourself and your business.
Yep.
I would say even so much so that you haven't had to press into the socials or the marketing strategies as much because you've just been out there already. Growing from here, you might need to press into it a little more to increase your name and your notoriety and get in with more bands and more venues and things like that. But I think there's a fallacy in our modern, especially young culture that says if I'm just on every social media platform creating content, I'll get found, and then my life will be great. And like that's totally not true. It took years of persistent diligence within a hobby that turned into a desire, profession that turned into a profession and a business. And it's like it's not that you just created content on TikTok. Now you actually put in the work to understand how lights and programming worked.
Yeah.
Then you risked a bunch of time and money to say, no, I'm serious about this. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but like it's so different than just saying, I'm going to post a lot of photos on Instagram.
Yeah, very, very different. I'm working on the keeping up with socials.
Yeah.
I think I made my first big post of a recent show that I did with my equipment and whatnot last night.
Yes.
Actually.
And it looked really good.
And yeah. So I'm trying to work back into that, but so that was the socials. As far as like other software that's helping me maintain, status of my equipment with like keeping up with serial numbers and who needs maintenance. And
golly, you got inventory and you got rotations and you got, oh my gosh.
Well, like I even need to know how many DMX cables I have, just like a microphone cable. Like I need to know how many of those I have because if I've got a rental coming up, but I'm using I'm using either all my equipment or a combination of mine and another company's. I need to know that, do I have enough cables for this? So I have to inventory my cables. I have to make sure those are maintenanced. If one connection's off, an entire run of signal could be completely cut. So
so how are you doing that?
One cable at a time. The same way you eat an elephant.
How are you managing that whole system?
So I've been using a software called Airtable.
Okay.
I found that out. I found that software to be extremely helpful with it has the capability of taking care of much larger infrastructure than what I have, but it's not so overpowered that it can't help me with my little bit of stuff.
Okay, cool.
It helps me to keep up with a ton of different variables. There are a ton of different options for how things are checked for maintenance or keeping up with the serial numbers, or even if I want to create a little sticker, being able to create QR codes or barcodes that I can then switch over onto a little sticker that I can print from the printer that I now own that prints little 2x1 stickers.
Yeah.
That way I can make fixture labels. Which that was also a more recent purchase. Just me actually being able to put my brand, put my logo and on my fixtures.
Yep.
That program is able to help with, almost all of the above.
Wow, that's cool.
There's a lot of things you can do with Airtable. It's both desktops, mobile. I'm not paid by them to say any of this. I just thoroughly enjoy.
But Airtable, if you're listening.
But yeah. There's that, and then this year I've started using QuickBooks for my everything accounting, and also I can put in my inventory, not so much on a by quantity basis, but as I'm building invoices, I can just select this.
Gotcha.
It already has taxes accounted for. It has the prices accounted for. There are a lot of different variables that you can change in there. You can add your services. I'm kind of in a space where I want to try. I was using specifically Zen Business beforehand, and I didn't completely dislike their flow of accounting. I'm in a place where I want to try and find the most intuitive for my business,
Right.
for how I operate.
Right.
So I'm trying QuickBooks next, just because I want to. It's a new calendar year, and
Let's try something new.
I'm gonna try it.
Iteration.
Yeah.
That's how businesses grow.
Well, it's also, I don't want to get stuck in this idea of, okay, well, I had this from the get-go, so this is the only program or
that's good.
whatever that I can use.
Yep.
There needs to be a understanding of being able to adapt and try new things and whatnot, because, Zen may be great for one, QuickBooks may be good for another. I may find out I really don't like QuickBooks by the end of the year, so maybe I'll switch back to ZenBooks, or maybe I'll try to I'll try another one. But like, trying out different companies for your accounting, for your inventory, for everything, I think there needs to be an understanding of having flexibility with that, especially in the beginning stages. Just because something works great for one person doesn't mean it'll work great for all.
Right.
So
have you found the pressure? I feel like this is a pressure point with other small companies I've talked to, is that when you start your entity, you have to buy your domain, then you have to go out and reserve it on YouTube and all the other .nets, .techs, AIs. You got to buy all the things. Then you got to set up your accounting software. Then you got to set up some sort of legal, and then you have your insurance, and then you have this, and then you have that, and you're like, I haven't even done anything, and I'm already like $8,000 into business quote unquote expenses.
Yeah.
Have you fallen into that trap, or have you been able to just say, okay, what do I need next? And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I kind of fell into that. Some of it's been extremely helpful. Some of it's been like, okay, well, I learned that I don't necessarily need this again. For instance, I hired an accountant, essentially. Not directly, but it was through 1-800-accountant.
Yeah.
My main focus was, now that I'm an established LLC, I want to make sure that I'm able to keep up with my bookkeeping correctly.
Right.
That way, when it comes tax season, I know things are done correctly. There was a lot about the bookkeeping that I was not prepared for. What I mean by that is like how things are annotated by their category. That way, what their expense type is correctly annotated when it comes to taxes. Of course, I've used other forms of personal bookkeeping in the past, like categorizing different expenses and whatnot. Again, that way, once it comes tax season, you can take care of your personal taxes the easiest.
100%.
Business side was a little bit different because the rules are different, and I wasn't so prepared. I didn't prepare myself for exactly what those rules were.
Okay.
So when I found that there was this offer for 1-800-accountant, you pay X amount and you get an accountant for a year, I was like, let me get that. My accountant, she's been incredibly helpful with helping me understand how to categorize things, because there have been plenty of things where, okay, this is this type of business expense, and then she sees it on the report and she's like, well, not really. And so we kind of quickly go over what the rule is on that, and I can change what that expense type categorizes.
Oh, okay.
How it categorizes.
I mean, so you're not only paying for the service, you're getting a real education about business taxes.
It's a real person.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a real person. You set up an appointment with them, and you are on the phone with them. You are both looking at the same reports. It's been very eye-opening.
Yeah. Because
there's a lot to understand with how expenses and income sources and all that stuff work, with how to prepare money to be put to the side for taxes, finding out that taxes can't only be submitted once a year. You could do 15 times a year if you wanted.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And like
you can do quarterly.
Yeah, you can do quarter. Yeah, I mean, like understanding how to prepare your finances in and out and be marked good by federal and state and whatnot more than just once. I mean, it's just, there's so many learning curves with it, where I felt like having that accountant was like, even if I feel good about my understanding after 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure my first year is done right.
Yeah.
So I subscribed to an accountant, or I did the year subscription pretty much, and that's been great.
Was there something that you subscribed to that just was total bogus?
I wouldn't say total bogus. I think there was another program. I didn't realize it was yet another bookkeeping program.
Okay.
So I made an account thinking it was a bank account. And it wasn't. So, I didn't do any bookkeeping with it once I found out exactly what it was. And this was partially my ignorance. This was me just like trying to get things put together without getting all the details and information first. I found out it was just another bookkeeping program. And I'm sure it's great, but I didn't need it. So
I am, as you're talking, like what's going through my head is like, oh my gosh, like no wonder it's so scary to start a business.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to like, oh, before I start, I need to know about this and I need to know about this. And I don't know anything about accounting. I don't know anything about opening a bank account under a business name. I don't know anything about filing quarterly or SEO or, all these other...
Or all these people trying to convince you that their product is the best.
Oh, 100% all the time.
Mine works better. You pay this much, but mine works better than this other.
Yep. Yeah. And I was like, no wonder we go, holy crap, that's terrifying. I don't want to do that.
Yep.
And then people either do it off books or they just don't do it.
Yeah.
And like, how have you personally grappled with that fear or hesitation, or if you had any fear or hesitation, and then just like, no, I'm just going to do it anyway. This is what I want.
I am a bit of the type of person that's just like, let's just go ahead and get our feet wet, and then we'll figure out how it works later. I mean, like when I bought that first laptop, that I could start learning that first bit of software, the industry standard software.
Yeah.
I bought a laptop, and I didn't have the extra money, but I was like, I really want to put my time and effort into learning this. I don't know when I'm going to begin profiting off of it, or really like putting my time into doing what I'm learning.
Right.
But I'm going to take a bet that I'm going to do it and it's going to turn into something. So I may not be the perfect example for this type of question.
There's no perfect example. There's examples in this world that we call business or entrepreneurship or like everybody's different.
Well, and it's also like hindsight's 20/20. And you can't get too caught up in the worry of, okay, if I do this, what's going to happen? And like when I realized I had, finished up to about $30,000 for initial equipment purchases and whatnot.
Right.
I was like, man, that is a lot of money. Now I'm like, I need to find a way to make money on this stuff. Instead of worrying about, oh man, I'm out $30,000. I'd rather put that time and energy into figuring out how to start recouping that in the ways that benefit the time and effort that I've put into all this so far.
Yeah. And you bought something with a plan that you could make money on. It wasn't just something that was like, oh, I'm going to start a business. I need to buy a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if your business requires a MacBook Pro, by all means, buy a MacBook. I don't care. Yeah. But it's just like you're buying all the things because that's what you need to have the business.
Yeah.
And, I feel that is one of the struggles that small companies have, is that they way over leverage themselves. And then they're just like, no, now I have to take clients.
Yeah.
And which I wanted to ask actually next is just like, in your process of doing rentals or even in your LD work, like, have you said no to clients because of their reputation or just because you had a bad feeling? Or like, have you experienced that yet where you've had to say no to, hey, no, I'm not going to rent you this equipment?
In my experience so far with working with other rental companies, working with other people who have rented from other rental companies, there's not a specific instance that I can think of where somebody's like, oh, I'm never going to work with this company again. Of course, people have their opinions and whatnot.
Right.
But like, I have not come across where it's like, unless it comes down to a financial difference, a major financial difference from one company to another, why they wouldn't just choose to work with somebody that's willing to work with them.
Yeah.
Luckily, in the production business world, it's very, number one, it's very much who you know, as most things are, but it's also when you build a level of trust with somebody and they've worked with your equipment or they've worked with your team or whatever, and they see, okay, they fit my needs with this and this and this, they're way more likely to continue working with you. So
yeah.
And the only reason I can't even think of a specific reason why I might say no, other than if it goes something against how I think morally or ethically, that would, then comes the conversation of how I run my business morally and ethically. So that's a whole side.
Right.
But of course I want to maintain my company being in good standing with other people, with myself. So I'm going to attempt to not have to say no. I just might be cautious in the future if it's a client that didn't take care of my equipment that well.
Right.
Or decide to do something with the equipment that was not on the initial agreement or, anything like that. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but
there's no wrong answer here. It's just
yeah. I want to be able to work with as many people as I can. I want to be able to fit the needs of as many people as I can. I guess, it more so just comes down to a moral or ethic indifference.
Yeah. So after a year, almost to the day of being in business or a formed entity in business, I'm like, did you meet your goals? Did you hit your revenue markers? Like, what does it look like to be, I guess, like, as maybe you have these numbers separated or maybe you have them combined, like as Firebreak, you bought a bunch of equipment last year and hopes and dreams, did it pay out?
So, my initial goals were like in this first, because this is something I set up with my accountant. They wanted to get a good idea of like how much business it is I'm intending to do. I hope to do. Like we put a couple different levels to this because it's like you may hope to do this much business, but there's also reality in place. Sure. My hope was to do about $15,000 worth of total business.
Okay.
Total revenue. I was expecting maybe closer to 10, just depending on, getting out in front of people, letting them know, hey, I can help you with this. Because a lot of my business come from word of mouth. Word of mouth or, word of mouth. So I was trying to have both a hopeful amount as well as a realistic, like it may actually be this and that's okay. Yeah. Because at least we're positive. Yeah. Or in the revenue regard. So with this being a full year, we actually finished out with $19,209.40 total business revenue.
Heck yeah.
With profits looking at about $5,434.40. Main reason for that big difference is because of the subleasing. There were a few shows where we subleased from another company. So even though we still offer or provide that business, of course that changes the profit variables on those invoices and whatnot. But we did, almost a little over $4,000 more than the hoped business amount,
and about double what you thought was like reasonable.
Yeah, that's almost double of what my expected amount was.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So right now margins are going to vary because of, okay, is it primarily our equipment? Is it primarily someone else's? Right. How big is the rental? What equipment is it? Because margins also change per equipment type. Right. Right now we're sitting at about 28% margins.
You're in the black first year.
Yeah. So
there should be a round of applause sound effect or something going on right now because that's incredible.
A soundboard you're gonna have. Next. Yeah. So that was exciting once I really got through and ran all the numbers in prep for taxes and whatnot. And I was like, I started adding the numbers together. I was like, wait a minute. oh, we passed the expected number. Okay, well, that's good. And then I'm getting closer and closer to the hoped number. Like, well, we did that. And then I realized I still had a small list to keep adding. I was like,
wow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So a lot of it was like small rentals. One of the big things I realized, having looked at all the revenue, made off of different projects and whatnot, was the small numbers add up really fast. Of course I want to have big rentals and, do all these big shows or whatever size shows. I want to be able to provide as much as they want. And of course I want the amount of equipment they rent to be a good number, because
up and up and up. Come on, use your stuff.
But there's also a reality that not everybody needs a ton of equipment. Maybe they just need a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I will, again, unless it's morally, ethically, we think different.
Mm-hmm.
Those small rentals honestly carried I would say about the vast majority of that total revenue.
So now seeing the numbers after a year, is that going to change how you strategize for the 24-25 year?
I wouldn't say change how I strategize for it. I'd say it will help me think through the types of rentals.
Okay.
Some of those lower number rentals were actually short-term rentals, where equipment was installed for a period of time, and then the client pays on a bi-week basis that they use it. I also, I try to be very fair with them. If there is a full week that they're not using the item, I won't charge you for it, because even though it's out of my inventory, if I'm not needing it elsewhere, I will let you carry through that week. Now that practice I'm trying to figure out if I want to change that in the future.
Right.
Just because as inventory increases and whatnot, if something is missing and it could be used elsewhere, that could be, that could be either a point of purchasing in more of that type of equipment that way I can supply for these other people, or if you're telling me you want it for X amount of time, you're paying for that full time.
Yeah, there'll probably be a risk analysis at some point. Be like, hey, if it's out of my hands, what is the potential of it being harmed, stolen?
Yeah.
Something about the state of the equipment changes over that week to when they go turn it back on again. It's like, oh, it doesn't work. Now it's your fault. Well, it turns out a keg was poured on it. Like,
well, the main thing, the main thing is making sure that agreements, all the terms and agreements are written out for what the full intent is. And then payment can be, like on my invoices, like on that per week situation, in the description, it said it covered this specific time period.
Okay.
So I try to be very descriptive in my invoicing and in terms and agreements on my contracts of stating how those two work together but are going to be separate.
Yeah.
The pay and the contract. But again, that may be a practice that I change in the future, just because, of course, that's opportunity for more profit, but also if I'm missing equipment that could be used elsewhere. Right now, I'm not in a situation where I'm dying for it to be used elsewhere, so I want to do good by other people. I want them to know that I run my business to try to take care of other people.
I'm reasonable. You can work with me.
I'm reasonable.
Yeah.
However, as the business grows, so does my need for that equipment elsewhere.
Right.
So, so far, it's only been 2 clients I've had to do that with. They're very understanding of exactly where I stand on that. That's the main thing too. Is I'm trying to create good relationships with these clients, not just, okay, you want to rent from me? Okay, cool. I know them on a first name basis. I want to help them with whatever they need, and kind of keep moving on from there.
Yeah. So are you in the process, as you are going about your business and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, or are you looking to other industries or other companies that are doing something similar to say, hey, how are they doing it? And are there practices in that business that I could bring into mine? Like as you were talking about, like having equipment and being just stationed here and I don't really need it. I was like, I was trying to think, what's a relatable company? And I was thinking like Sunbelt heavy equipment rental. of like where they a lot of times will have rentals that are year long.
Yeah.
Whether that be cranes or dozers or whatever, and sometimes they're being used, sometimes they're not being used. I have no clue on how they write up their rental agreements.
Right.
But are you trying to educate yourself from different industries, or are you sticking kind of strictly within the lighting sphere, or what are your influences in regards to learning best practices or how I'm going to do this going forward?
So it's been mostly just lighting companies, lighting and production companies overall. Mainly because a lot of those different scenarios that I'm trying to work into, they have already they've already done it. I'm not trying to recreate the wheel necessarily.
Your brand, but it doesn't have to be invented new.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't looked specifically into other industries, but I'm gonna put that in my notes now. That maybe it'd just be helpful to get other people's perspectives and ideas on how they do that. I do remember when I first created my when I first purchased some of the inventory that I have now, and I was figuring out what margin should I have on this? What is the weekly rental rate?
Mm-hmm.
I just started looking up rental equipment rates and whatnot to see if anybody was able to give me a percentage.
Yeah, just percentages.
A percentage off what value. So I think it's funny you say Sunbelt. I think one of the searches was actually for Sunbelt because it was a heavy equipment rental company. Yeah, it might have been Sunbelt. But they put their variable, their margin on there. And I was like, okay, well, I'll start with that. Yeah. And then I started to realize, and they also had it on a by week, by month, different time periods. The thing is, though, is that those variables are specific to their equipment and
their
how
industry.
often they have to maintain it, and or send it off for maintenance or whatever. Whereas I'm trying to do more in-house maintenance. Yep. So I still have a charge for the maintenance, or a charge that's implemented in the total cost, but my variables are different just because of that.
It's like having a cleaning fee on Airbnb or VRBO, and it's like, I'm going to put the sheets on myself. Come on, let's be real. I'm like, yeah.
Well, I mean, think about all the factors that go into renting, let's say, one light. Mm-hmm. You have a percentage of the retail cost, or at least the purchase cost. You have a percentage of the maintenance cost. Mm-hmm. You have, unless you have factored in labor elsewhere, you have, which most of the time I do, but so I've seen it a couple times where there's a tiny percentage of labor cost per fixture, because that's energy someone's putting into
moving, transporting, taking care of that fixture.
Exactly. Yeah. Now again, most people don't do it that way. I've only seen it once or twice. Yeah. And I was like, that's another way you could do that. So there are a few different factors that can go into the price. So trying to find the best ratios and margins and whatnot to factor in all of these different
aspects of your business.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So looking at 2024 into 2025, what are your goals, hopes, and dreams for Firebreak? Are we doing 19 again? Are we doing 40? Are we doing you set some goals last year and you blew them out of the water? Yeah. What are we shooting for this year?
Yeah. So main thing is, while I did hit my hopeful revenue, my expectation was much lower, and I kind of want to go with that principle again, but I don't really want to put a number on the expected. Right, because I'm not looking at it okay, I've already broken my hopeful number once, I'm going to obviously do it again.
We did 1,000%. We're going to do it again.
Yeah. Can you believe it? We 10x'd our company.
Exactly. Yeah. Every year.
I'm not. The revenue is great. The revenue is obviously what's going to keep the company flowing, provide the opportunity for more fixtures, which provides opportunity for more moments being made in whatever facet. Yep. I'm going to make my hopeful number, but the thing is, because that's actually my target.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not upset that I had the two different numbers, the expected and the hopeful.
Yeah.
But I think with putting an expected number, I was going to be okay with settling with that.
This is like my measure of I did good. I did okay. It was a successful endeavor, if we can even say it. Or even you can just prove to yourself, like, I invested this time. I invested this money. This means it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue on.
Yeah. So, I want to put more emphasis on that hopeful. I want to talk with an accountant, of course. I'm like, hey, this is what we look like this year, and so on and so forth. But again, it's one of those where, like, I have an idea and I want to reach that idea. Whether I do or don't, I know I was in the right pursuit.
Right.
That's my main focus with the year. Some people may be like, okay, but don't you have like a monetary goal? I mean, of course, I want to make $1 million in revenue this year. I'm not going to do that, but like, but I want to try to run my business as if I'm anticipating making $1 million this year.
Right.
I would rather work on that.
It's the same. I feel like what you're describing is the exact same principle of like you creating that pre-vis show that you were then able to show that guy at a moment's notice when he's like, hey, can you actually do this? And you're like, no, I'm going to mindset and structurally prepare myself for the big break because I don't know when it's going to come. Yeah. And I think that's just extremely wise. And I would say most companies I've encountered thus far that are on the smaller side or the beginning side is they do the exact opposite of that. They act as if they're $1 million company. The landscaping company that goes out and buys the brand new F-250 with the brand new trailer with the high-end equipment, and then they hope and pray that they bring in $40,000 a month to cover up baseline expenses. Yeah. And then they have all the show of $1 million company, but they are broke. Yeah. And they're just going to be in the wind in 18 months. Yeah. Which is, I think, the opposite of what you're talking about is like, no, I'm going to do all the foundational things, hoping that I'll get there to that $1 million level, $500,000 level, $10 million, whatever that is. Yeah. But I'm not going to over leverage. I'm not going to, both in financially, but also in my how I act, like you talked about the personal touch and being able to, be accessible to your clients. Like most people don't want to just type in a chat box and say help. Like, they want to talk to a person. And I've even noticed that for myself of like, I will pay more money as long as I know that I can pick up the phone and call a person. Because like, when the show is 10 minutes from starting, I don't want a helpline. Yeah. I want a person to be like, bro, this is wrong. What are my 3 solutions? And you're that guy.
I can't remember exactly what season or what episode, but I want to operate like Dunder Mifflin.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, because they were talking to a client. It was Jim and Dwight. They were sitting in front of a client, and they were like, well, guys, we kind of want to go with one of the bigger guys. They tell us that they have more they can offer us. And Dwight is starting to call one of these companies and they're just on a wait line. Yeah. Whereas Jim gets on the phone and calls their helpline, and I mean in seconds, Kelly Kapoor is on the phone. So the effect of being able to have that type of customer service readily available, number one, but also be able to guarantee somebody we are intentional about meeting your needs. Yeah. You tell us what it is you're trying to create here, and we can fill that void. Instead of it just being like, hey, we have all this to offer, you pick what you want and we'll send it to you.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I would rather be a company that somebody's like, I want to work with them, not just, oh, they were on a list of companies and I just clicked on theirs.
Right. So what are you doing personally to be ready for that next growth moment? Because you've had some big growth moments in the last couple of years where it's like, no, this is an idea. I'm going to do my personal research and put in my hours just to learn the stuff. Now I'm going to go buy the stuff. Now I'm just going to risk my time, energy, and money to go do the things. It's happening. It's like, okay, the next level, with, maybe that's revenue, maybe that's, 10 times your equipment, maybe that's more storage, maybe whatever. Like, what are you doing to prepare for that next opportunity?
You can never be upset with doing even just a little bit every day. I mean, even if you're spending 30 minutes or an hour on doing research on, if you are looking for a new bookkeeping company, or if there's a good used lighting market that I want to check out and see, like, could any of these fixtures could I be profitable with some of these fixtures?
Right.
Or reaching out, for instance, what I'm doing now is reaching out to bands I find on YouTube and being like, hey, I really liked this music video. I own this company. This is my name. I own this company. Here's what I can provide. If you guys are ever out on the road doing a tour, I'd be happy to, provide you with a lighting equipment rental.
Right.
That will help give your band that extra level of creativity, of creating moments with people not just hearing your music but feeling like they are witnessing it. So yeah, just doing that little bit every day, staying humble.
Yeah.
Like, I am ecstatic that I did more in revenue than I even hoped for.
So great.
But at the same time, that's just checkpoint 1.
Yeah.
So I'm happy, but I'm not done. So I want to keep going with that. Be ready for things to not go your way. There's so many things that I'm like, okay, I know how this is going to work. And then I get there and it's like, well, that wasn't it.
I need to adapt a little bit right now because it ain't working.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's always be ready for something to go wrong. Because that way, when it does, at least you're both mentally prepared for it. Hopefully you've educated yourself in a way to where you know how to respond to the situation. It will help you, like, stay calm in the situation. Just be ready for things to be wrong. I've got taxes I've got to send in here soon.
Yep.
This is my first time doing it as an LLC. We'll see if we'll see what happens, So, I mean, of course there's a lot of I wouldn't say anxiety that brings, but, like, it's just, you can get a little nervous about that. But it's okay because number one, I've financially put into the resources, having an accountant that will help me figure that out.
Yep.
So if I need to worry, I know I have a backup. No, I shouldn't say a backup. I know I have someone that's much more educated than I am that's able to help me, that I can lean back.
I think that is one of the most important things I've ever experienced entrepreneurially, is that there's no such thing, and a bold statement, there's no such thing as a solopreneur.
Yep.
No matter if you are, in reality, you are doing everything. You are doing the bookkeeping, you are doing the HR, you are doing the advocacy, you are doing the health and safety, you are doing the maintenance, you are doing the actual advertising. You're doing everything.
Yep.
You are a solopreneur. But you have a team of people around you that you can call and ask questions. You can meet with them for coffee or lunch and say, hey, I don't know the answer to this. Do you have any suggestion on what my first step might be?
Yeah.
And then go from there. Whether that be your accountant, whether it be a friend, a parent, whatever, a fellow business person that you've interacted with.
Yeah.
I think that no business has ever been created alone.
Yeah.
Even if it looks like it. I'm convinced of this in my heart. Like, it's never happened. And so the faster I think I admit that to myself, and you talk about the humility of saying, I don't have every single answer, then the quicker I can get to the solution.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really kind of the main thing for my personal growth is just prayer. Just
That's good.
Whether it's good or bad, just praying through it, praying for the wisdom to figure things out. Because even though you may be in that solopreneur situation, you're not alone.
Never.
You're never alone. Whether you need to get on the phone with another friend of yours that maybe has been helpful and inspiring with you growing in your business ventures, or picking up a certain book.
Yeah.
Just you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put yourself in such a panic that you're about to sink in some giant ship.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. So if you were going to tell something to your 18, 20-year-old self, the advice or the, oh my gosh, you have no idea what's coming, like, is there anything that you would tell an up-and-coming LD or person who wants to get into the rental space of, like, what would you say to them before they actually jump into that full-fledged?
Yeah, you can spend a lot of time worrying and thinking, like, okay, but if I do this, like, what will happen with this? What will happen with this?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask the majority of, especially still in their newer years, any other business owner, like, okay, but how did you figure this out? Well, it sucked, but I figured it out.
It didn't go well the first 3 times.
Yeah. So don't spend so much time worrying, thinking that you have to have it figured out from the get-go. The vast majority of us don't, and we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
So stop worrying so much and just start doing. Start either learning or start learning what it is you need to know to be semi-fruitful to get started, but also, like, start putting in the effort as far as, like, okay, maybe I should start leaning towards filing as an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should start leaning towards, okay, I need to save some money that way I can start acquiring equipment.
Mm-hmm.
There's never a perfect time to start. There never will be.
Go out and sell the job and then figure out the step after that. Like, there's no procedure here.
Yeah.
Like, just do it, man.
And the same principle that, like, I started doing before I was registered, that I was telling other people my business entity. I was telling them the name. That helped me believe it. Mm-hmm. You've got to believe in what it is that you're trying to do. Otherwise, you won't convince other people that you're trying to do something.
You have a business? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then just be a sponge. Get around people that have done it, and, I mean, try to absorb as much information as you can from them. That's how you can avoid most of your mistakes, but you're not going to avoid all of them. But it's just, the more you know up front, the more you're capable of knowing, I should say, the better prepared you can be later if you actually apply what it is that they're sharing with you.
Right. That's so awesome, man. So where can people find you personally if they need an LD? Where can they find you if they need Firebreak services for renting fixtures? Like, give me the plug. What is going on? How do we get to you?
Yeah, so personal Instagram is at mattw.show. It's with 2 T's. Everything with Firebreak, it quite literally is Firebreak Lighting in all situations. Firebreaklighting.com. Facebook is Firebreak Lighting, and Instagram is Firebreak Lighting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Buddy, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us your story and walking us through that whole process of going, like, it was a hobby, it was a hope, it was a dream. I bought some stuff, maybe it'll work. And, hearing now the entire story, it really comes down to, it's like, it was an idea. You went to a show and you asked a question.
Yep.
Hey, man, have you ever thought about this? And I'm like, to me, that's just like, at that point, your trajectory changed. It's like the willingness to get over that fear to ask a question of that DJ that one night of like, yeah, it was like, I hope I could do this. Maybe I could do this. Oh, that's so cool. I saw this on YouTube. Like, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, no, I could do that.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this? And I was like, boom, opportunity opened.
Belief will do so much for you. The more you believe that you can do something, the more convinced you are, the more it's likely to happen.
Sounds like you need to write a book.
Oh, goodness.
Well, Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.